This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hello, I'm Diane Morgan. If you know who I am, you know who I am. If you don't, who cares? I'm here to explain Italian Time, a holiday phenomenon where Italians throw away their clocks and gather for eternity with San Pellegrino. I've been at this party so long that I've eaten 5 courses, hugged someone's grandma twice, and been offered a job in the family restaurant. So this holiday season, make sure to bring enough San Pellegrino to last you through the meal, the after meal, and the entire goodbye ritual. San Pellegrino, holiday on Italian Time.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
I know every operating system like the back of my hand.
I have 25 years of experience and have worked with several people from your company. I've been recognized for my passion. My team is everything.
LinkedIn delivers candidates who rise above the rest. With an up-to-date view into shared connections, skills, and interests you won't find anywhere else. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
The Subaru Share the Love event is on from November 20th to January 2nd. During this event, Subaru donates to charities like Meals on Wheels, and so far has supported the delivery of nearly 5 million meals to our aging neighbors. When you purchase or lease a new vehicle during the 2025 Subaru Share the Love event, Subaru and its retailers will make a minimum $300 donation to charity. Visit Subaru.com/share to learn more.
Hey there, Duke fans. Time for episode 128 of DBR Bites, the Duke Basketball Roundup. Jason and Donald here for you. We got to preview a little bit of basketball action. We got to talk with the ACC. ACC season is here. Donald, are you ready for the ACC?
I'm born ready. This is the Conference of Champions, and we are the defending champions. So now it is time to defend our crown. And Jason, also after a long holiday break, you know, we're coming off of the loss of against Texas Tech. Sorry to you and your people down there in Atlanta, but we got to take it out on somebody, and hopefully that somebody is Georgia Tech.
Yeah, exactly. I may be from Atlanta, but my allegiance is clearly with the team in Durham, not the team in my backyard. I am bummed to say that Duke is playing at home this year as opposed to playing in Atlanta. I do particularly enjoy it when we come down to McCamish. It used to be Alexander Memorial Coliseum, because I get to see my Blue Devils in person, although I'll be doing that a couple times later this month, later in January. Hey, Donald, just super fast before we get to our Georgia Tech preview, and before we get to, we're going to be doing, by the way, folks, a bit of an ACC preview, sort of what we're looking at in the conference so far this season. But I did want to mention that we are on the eve. We're recording this in the afternoon on the 29th, on Monday. By this time tomorrow, Tuesday, we will have an announcement from Darren Rippey. He is a recruit that Duke has been in hot pursuit of, considered perhaps almost certainly the best pure point guard in the class of 2026. And he's going to be announcing, I believe, on CBS Sports tomorrow afternoon. And once that announcement happens, you and I think, are probably going to hop on. Won't do a long thing, won't take a lot of time, but we're probably going to hop on, chat a little bit about who he is. This is all assuming things go well for Duke.
Yeah.
We will not
if he doesn't commit to us, we don't care.
If he picks someplace else, he's dead to us.
Be the last time you hear his name.
Right. Exactly. But there's lots of talk that apparently perhaps he's going to pick the Blue Devils. And if that happens, we'll be here to chat with you about it. And if not, will be here to chat with you after the Blue Devils game against Georgia Tech. So that is my segue into our conversation about the Yellow Jackets, Duke's inaugural ACC contest coming to us on New Year's Eve. Interesting time for Duke to be playing a basketball game. I guess it'll be a little bit before the champagne pops and all that other kind of stuff.
Hey, I was in Cameron last year. We played Virginia Tech last year on New Year's Eve. It was a great time. Not as many people in Cameron because obviously people. There was also like a little bit of a snowstorm that was thinking it was going to be down in the area. And so we went down. Me and my best friends, we went down. My godson, we all went to the game, and we were just like, okay, since it's kind of icy or supposed to be icy, we're just going to go back to the hotel and chill. Like we basically went to a couple places, grabbed something to eat, and then went back very early and chilled. But it's a cool vibe to be down in Durham on New Year's Eve. So if you're in the area and you have tickets, definitely enjoy it. Of course, be safe because it is New Year's Eve, but it should be a fun time.
Donald, love the story about a year ago, but let's fast forward a year into the future, which is taking us to today, or almost to today, as we look ahead to the Duke game against Georgia Tech on New Year's Eve. I want to mention right off the bat that this has been a pretty frustrating and disappointing season for Georgia Tech so far. They started the year, Donald. They were number 70 in KenPom at the very beginning of in the preseason. You know, functionally, where they were in the preseason was a team that a lot of people thought could, be on the bubble or at least very, very close to it. A team that would compete in the middle of the ACC. And, things go right. If you get some guys who perform a little better than expected, suddenly you're an NCAA tournament team. Instead, as I said, they started 70th. They are now 133rd in KenPom. It has been nothing but them going south since the moment they started playing basketball games. And it's worth noting, if it wasn't for Boston College, if it wasn't for BC, Georgia Tech would be the worst team in the ACC. If it wasn't for BC and Rutgers, they would be the worst power conference team in the country. It has just really, really been a poor season so far for the Yellow Jackets. And now I want you to take me through, tell me who they've played and how they've done. I guess they have not done very well against what has been one of the easiest schedules in the entire country.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned all that, and you can look at the record and they're 9-4, and you go, Jason just went off on them for being 9-4. That seems pretty decent, right? Well, let's talk about who they have played thus far. The wins come against teams like Maryland Eastern Shore, Bryant, Southeastern Louisiana, Georgia Southern, West Georgia, Monmouth, Marist, Lafayette, and just the other night against Florida A&M. Jason, you mentioned how they haven't really played anybody or beaten anybody of significance. Marist, at what I believe is 151st in KenPom, is the only team they have beaten that is above 200 in KenPom. Everyone else is in the 200s or much lower. Their losses, you have Georgia by 5. They had 3 straight losses to DePaul, Drake, and Mississippi State, all of them by double digits. Jason, I think the one thing you mentioned, right? You mentioned with KenPom that they're ranked 133rd after being in the 70s to start the season. I think what an even bigger tale is when you look at some of the other metrics. Evan Mia has them at 121st. He has them ranked the highest of any of the metrics. Bart Torvik has them at 145th. And what is probably maybe arguably the most important statistic is the net. They are listed at 179th in the net, which means, Jason, this is a quad 4 game.
Oh my God.
Conference, which is not something, as you mentioned, we thought was going to happen. And we'll talk about the rest of the ACC a little bit later. We didn't think that was going to happen when we talk about the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets.
Wow. Quad 4. And by the way, as I said, they have played you mentioned the teams. They've played such an absurdly easy schedule. There's no excuse for them to be 9-4 against this schedule. Their non-conference schedule, 356th in the country. 356.
Out of 365.
Yeah, exactly. One of the bottom 10 schedules in the country. West Virginia is the only power conference team who has played a worse schedule than Georgia Tech. Blech. That is just embarrassing. Let's talk about the metrics a little bit. Let's talk about what Georgia Tech does well and what they do poorly. They play fairly fast on offense, which may not be a good thing because they're very poor at turnovers.
Yes.
They're playing fast, and turning the ball over. They turn the ball over on almost 19% of their possessions, 260th in the nation. at turnover percentage. Not good. A lot of those turnovers, by the way, are steals. You could definitely look for Duke to potentially be able to get out on the fast break, get some steals, and get some good things happening. Dame Sarr is very excited to be playing Georgia Tech. Let's just put it that way.
Malik Brown in his E Honda arms, right? Like, are going to be all over the place. Deflections. If there's a thing for plus 10 deflections by Malik Brown, take the over.
Yeah, exactly. They're also not a good shooting team. They hit barely 50% of their 2-point field goals, which is not good. They're decent, but not great from 3-point range, 35% in their threes, but they don't shoot a lot of threes. They're one of the bottom 20 teams in the country at their 3-point field goal rates, the number of threes they take. They're also a very poor free throw shooting team. Donald, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about free throws lately. Duke's not good. Georgia Tech's even worse at free throws than the Blue Devils are. They hit barely 68% of their free throws. On the boards, they're just an average offensive and defensive rebounding team. Decent, but nothing special at either one of them. They are better on defense, though, than they are on offense. They have a top 100 defense. They don't force a lot of turnovers, but they do. This is the thing Georgia Tech probably does better than anything else. They do a really nice job of contesting your shot. They only allow teams to hit 29% from 3-point range. That's really strong. They only allow teams to hit 47% on their 2-point field goals. That's really, really strong. This is what Georgia Tech does better than anything else. They block shots, they protect the rim, they force you into difficult shots, and they do all of that while doing a pretty good job of not fouling and sending teams to the free throw line. Now, who does Georgia Tech have that's able to do this stuff for them?
Real quick, Jason, before we do that, I just want to go back to the turnovers part, because I think what's important is that in every single loss they had this season, with the exception of the game against Drake, they had 13, 14, 15 turnovers in those games. They averaged 13.6 a game. And if you look at the turnover rates for all of their main guys that you're about to talk about, all of them are above 19, 20%. Like, every single, it's not like there's one person who handles the ball a lot and is prone to turnovers. Anybody who grabs the ball on the Yellow Jacket offense has been known to turn it over at times. And I think that is where they've become, it's not even them playing sloppy. Like you said, they play fast, but at a certain time, they decide to throw the ball away and they don't take care of the basketball. This is where Duke really needs to hone in, because I think, again, as you mentioned, we have an opportunity to get a lot of points off of turnovers.
All right, let's get to the players very quickly. And I think it starts for Georgia Tech with Bai Dongo. This is his third year in the program. Duke has been on the receiving end of some really good games by Bai Dongo. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm a little bit disappointed that he hasn't evolved into an even better player. I sort of thought that this guy, he's not entirely different from what he was as a freshman, now that he's a junior. And I sort of thought he was going to grow into a guy that would have more NBA stock. I sort of always thought, he's been tempted by the NBA a few different times. And I always thought, next year he's going to come back, he's going to develop more of an outside shot. Or next year he's going to come back and he's going to be even more, they're going to run the offense through him even more. And his incredible athleticism is going to combine with his skill, and this guy's going to really explode and be a first-team All-ACC player. And it's never quite happened for him, but he is really, really good. He averages 12 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. He's hitting about 60% of his field goals, so he takes really good shots. He is venturing outside a little more this year than he did in previous years. He's shooting a few more threes, and he's hitting them for the most part. Look, Georgia Tech, when they get the ball to Bai Dongo in the high post, good things happen for them. He's averaging more than 3 assists per game, and he's also a very, very good rim protector. He's going to be matched up with Cameron Boozer in this game, and I think it's a really, really interesting matchup. They are very similar in terms of their size. Cam probably is a little more physical than Bai Dongo, but Bai is able to bang with you if that's what you want. And I'm just, I think that's a really, really fascinating matchup to watch in this game. I don't think that Bai is able to keep up with Cam in terms of the scoring, but if Bai is able to, maybe match him in rebounds, if Tech's able to run the offense through Bai the same way Duke does through Cam, that's a formula where Duke could be in some trouble. All right, Bai Dongo is not their leading scorer. Let's move on to the leading scorer for Georgia Tech, and that is Kawasi Reeves. He's a wing. He averages about 15.5 points per game. He is in his 5th year. Kawasi Reeves is. He got hurt a year ago, had to redshirt. This is a guy who's been around college basketball for a while, though. He's very, very experienced. He has turned into an elite outside shooter. He's hitting better than 40% on his three-pointers. If Georgia Tech has a formula for beating a team like Duke, it is probably for a guy like Kawasi Reeves to go off a little bit. They have an impact transfer that I want to talk about. Their point guard is a guy named Lamar Washington. He played a couple years at Texas Tech and was just a non-factor there. Last year, he went to Pacific, where he blossomed into the best player on Pacific. In fact, Donald, he averaged a 10.55 when he was last year at Pacific, which is pretty darn good. This year, he comes back to a power conference team, comes to Georgia Tech. He's averaging 10 points per game, more than 6 assists per game. They moved Lamar Washington into the starting lineup 4 games ago, and he has exploded for them. He's had a pair of 20-point games. He's had 2 games of 10-plus assists. Look, when your point guard's getting double-digit assists, that is a good thing. Over these 4 games that he's had as a starter, he's averaging 16 points per game, 8.5 assists per game. So, I don't know that if Georgia Tech has maybe figured something out with him, but they are clearly putting the ball in Lamar Washington's hands and letting him make decisions for them, and it's working out so far. There's one other guy I want to mention when we're talking about their players, because Georgia Tech, by the way, has a lot of different guys that they play. I'm not here to tell you about the 7th, 8th man, but there's one other guy who's very interesting. Freshman center, Mohamed Silla from Senegal. Now, he played last year at a big-time prep school in Arizona. This guy's like a top 20 recruit. He might have been the best or the second best center in the freshman class. This is not the kind of recruit that Georgia Tech usually gets. And on Georgia Tech's website, where they have a bio of him, they claim he was recruited by Duke. I don't remember Duke going after Mohamed Silla, but maybe we did. I didn't hear anything.
Maybe kick the tires on him.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but he is a big-time recruit. He took an official visit to Kansas. And Georgia Tech and Kansas usually aren't recruiting the same kind of guys. He had offers from several big-time programs. He's having a real impact as a freshman. He leads their team in rebounds at 8.4 rebounds per game. He's scoring more than 11 points per game. 6'10", 240, really strong, but also really, really mobile. This is a very interesting matchup for Patrick Gongba. This guy does a great job of patrolling the paint. He's one of the big reasons we talked, Donald, earlier about how good Georgia Tech is at 2-point field goal defense. He is a really good rim protector, and he's a good rim runner on offense. He's a guy who's, he's not going to, sit in the post and put moves on you, in the low post, but he will run at the rim. He'll do short drives. If he gets the ball like in the high post, he'll put the ball on the floor once or twice and then try and finish at the rim. Like I say, he is a guy who I think could present problems potentially for Patrick Gongba, and he's one of the better young big men in the ACC, and that's really saying something because there are a lot of good young big men in the ACC. The last thing I want to note about Georgia Tech super quick, this is a big Georgia Tech team. It's unlikely you're going to see anyone under 6'3" on the floor for them, and they have a whole bunch of guys between 6'5" and 6'7" who are going to match up with. Duke has big wings. They're going to match up fairly well with the Duke wings in terms of size. And like I said, between Mohamed Silla and Bai Dongo, they got some real size in the post as well to match up with Cameron Boozer and Patrick Gongba. There are a lot of things that go into winning, and size is something that Duke has on a lot of teams. We will not have a lot of size on this Georgia Tech club. If that's a place where they can have some hope, that is it for sure.
And it's not just tall, it's wide, right? Dongo's 240, Sila's 240. They have a guy that doesn't play that much. He probably get 8 to 10 minutes a game. Peyton Marshall, who's 7 feet tall, 300 pounds. They have guys that are wide. And that means, again, you're going for rebounding purposes, we're going to need to not just be taller. We have to be in position to knock out some of those rebounds.
Yeah, my last thing I have in this game is that Ken Pomeroy projects that Duke wins this game by 24 points. And so, if most ACC games, you don't go, oh, we should win this one by 25. But, the line's going to be big, folks. And the expectation is that Duke should handle Georgia Tech fairly comfortably as we begin the ACC campaign.
So as we kind of get into some of these things to watch, I think the first thing that everyone, and we even had questions about this before the Texas Tech game, this is an 11-day layoff after we just had 2 games, and then we had a 10-day layoff before that. After another long layoff, when we saw against Lipscomb, is that the rust showed itself not in our shooting, but in our discipline, our taking care of the basketball, our effort. And after another long layoff, we need to shed the rust quickly and cleanly. What that means is limit the mistakes. I know you're going to make a couple, but limit them. Get good shots, make them. And I think when you talk about the fact that a lot of people are lamenting the fact that we're 11-1. We started out the year 11-0, Jason, and that one loss was by 1 point, and we spent an hour trying to figure out what was wrong. We have to return to what made us 11-0. Tough defense, discipline, moving the ball around. This is a team that you can move the ball around on. I know they like to score via the pass, but we do as well. Being efficient on offense, I think, is one of the things that our defense has not been able to trigger lately in the last couple of weeks. We need to get back to our defense being efficient on defense, turning that into efficient offense on the other end. And I think the final thing is the one thing that I always lean on when you're coming back from a long layoff is intensity, that sense of urgency. And maybe we have some renewed sense after the guys had a couple of days off for Christmas and then got back to things and really got back to the basics of how do we get to this point of being 11-1? Take the intensity to a new level. This is the ACC now. We have to be ready to play because every team that comes into Cameron from here on out, every team that we face from here on out are teams that have heard all season that it's Duke and everybody else. Georgia Tech may be a team that is struggling, but they would like to start off the ACC part of the season on the right foot by having a good showing against the team that everyone thinks is far and away the class of the ACC. We have to respond in kind.
Hey, last thing I'll mention about this, I think it is your mentioning of the rust is super significant, especially because Georgia Tech got a game. They just played yesterday against Florida A&M. They got a game to knock the rust off. Duke is the team coming off the really, really, really long break. And by the way, it's a break where the guys went home for several days to celebrate Christmas with their families. So, it wasn't just like take a little bit of time off, but you're still here on campus and you can work out and stuff. They literally left campus for several days. So, yeah, this is, I don't want to say it's a trap game, but man,
we traditionally, like Jason,
we
traditionally don't play well coming out of this Christmas break. How many games we had that Wake Forest game a few years ago against, I guess Wake Forest a couple of times. Even that Virginia Tech game last year, we started out slow and we were able to overcome it. But this Christmas break, because of the fact that guys leave campus, and that's not an excuse, right? We want them to leave campus. We think the energy from them going home and seeing their families is going to help us the rest of the year. But for this one game coming out, it always seems like both teams are in a league, just out of sorts. And as you mentioned, Georgia Tech having one of those games to kind of figure that part out a couple of days before us is really going to be maybe a boost to them in that first 5 minutes. But again, this is something that we always know is coming, and we need to overcome it.
Yeah. All right. With that, let's take a quick break. On the other side, let's talk ACC. Who are the teams who've impressed us so far? Who are the teams that have been disappointing so far? Who are the names you need to know as ACC season gets underway? We're going to have all that for you as the Duke Basketball Roundup continues in just a moment.
This is Jason Momoa, and I'll be your finance professor today. Welcome to Banking Smarter 101 with Chime. Bam! First lesson, sign up for Chime and set up direct deposit. You'll be joining millions of members banking fee-free. Second lesson, get cash back on eligible purchases while building credit and a higher APY on your savings. That's how you bank smarter this season. Fa-la-la-la-la, class dismissed. Join Chime today.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and a secure Chime Visa credit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Optional services and products may have fees or charges. Details at chime.com/feesinfo. With a qualifying direct deposit, earn 1.5% cash back on eligible secure Chime Visa credit card purchases. On-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Results may vary. APY means annual percentage yield. Learn about credit building and more at chime.com.
Game's over. Time to check my fantasy scores.
You using a VPN?
Why?
Because using public Wi-Fi without a VPN is like leaving your wallet open on the table.
Oh. Time to up my defense.
McAfee Secure VPN keeps your personal information private and is included in all McAfee plans starting at just $39.99 for your first year. Sign up at McAfee.com/online protection.
Oh, Hilton stay. Your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
All right, back from the break here on the DBR podcast. Donald and I are now going to dive into the ACC season and sort of what's been going on in the preseason and how the conference is doing. It is clearly, Donald, it's clearly a much deeper league than it was a year ago. A year ago, there were, as we discussed, there were like 2, 3, maybe 4 teams that were competitive with top teams in the country. And that is definitely not the case this year. I looked, and I think there are at least 12 teams in the ACC this year that feel like if they can find a way to get to like 10-8, if they can find a winning record in the ACC in the ACC regular season, that they're going to have a good chance to make the NCAA tournament. It's a better league than I expected it to be, and that is a welcome thing. Even though it's going to mean probably more. Duke's not going 19-1. Duke's not going to the ACC with one loss this year. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. If we do, my goodness, how impressive that would be. But the league is clearly better than it was a year ago. Talk a little bit about what you've seen so far from the conference.
It's interesting, right? One of the things we talked about at the beginning of the season, like in the offseason, we kind of noted several times that we needed the ACC to do well in this non-conference slate to kind of show the rest of the country and really show the selection committee that, hey, ACC teams can take anybody out in the NCAA tournament. They can have success. And because of that, you should let a lot of them in. And I think the idea of getting from 3 and then like the Bubba Cunningham UNC nuclear option from last year to having 6, 7 solid teams in, it required the teams to get better and it required them to perform well against some of these other teams. Now,
and Donald, by the way, we should note, this is not just us being ACC homers. It is good for Duke to play good teams. It's good for Duke to play teams that are tournament quality. I'm not saying that Duke suffered last year in the NCAA tournament as a result of playing a weak ACC. But, all season long, we were like, oh, and Duke's in a close game. We didn't have a lot of close games. We tended to lose virtually every close game we had last year. I don't know if maybe the team is a little tiny bit more prepared for a close contest if they'd had more competitive games in the ACC. Most of our ACC games were functionally over at halftime. And I think it's better, even though, again, we may take more losses, even though it's going to be tougher on your and my fingernails. I think it's better for Duke to have more teams that they play that are capable of beating them, which was just not the case a year ago.
See, what's funny is I love the blowouts, and I know you did too. I know a lot of people love the blowouts, but at the same time, there's a reason why we scheduled a non-conference slate that we did this year. John Shire said, hey, we may not have the quad one opportunities once we get in conference that other teams have, so we need to schedule them now to make sure that we have enough, because he's looking at the selection committee to say, if we have a certain record and you compare us against some of these other schools, we want to have the number 1 overall seed. We want to be in the East where we're playing right here in Washington, D.C. We want the easy path to Indianapolis. To do that, you kind of have to compare these conferences because that's what happened last year. The SEC got the number 1 overall seed in Auburn over us because they felt that the SEC was better. Well, let's take a look real quickly, Jason, at how the ACC has done relative to 2 metrics that we're using, the KenPom top 50 and the net. We'll look at KenPom. The ACC right now has 8 teams in the top 50, which is tremendous. And they have 15 in the top 100, which I think is incredible. If you look at the SEC last year, all 16 teams were basically in the top 90 of KenPom. We kind of have a similar metric. But against the top 50, we haven't done as well as we would like. We're only 18 as a conference. The ACC is 18-35 against the KenPom top 50. Only Duke, Louisville, and UNC have more than one win against the KenPom top 50. And there are 7 teams, most of them at the bottom, but there are 7 teams that have 0 wins against the KenPom top 50. Now, when you extrapolate to the top 100, from between 51 and 100, it's much better. We're 23-5. So we have that going for us. But I think we would have liked to see that top end, the top 50 record be a little bit better. But 18 wins is still great. That's a lot more than we had last year. Really, it was just Duke and maybe Louisville, maybe UNC really pacing the conference in that area. When you look at the net, we obviously talk about quad wins. We just talked about Georgia Tech being a quad 4 game. But really, the big ones that we narrow down to what the committee loves to see is that you're having your opportunities and taking advantage of your opportunities against quad 1 and quad 2 teams. Now, this is a metric that can shift throughout the year as teams get better or teams get worse, but here's how it stands right now. Against quad 1, in quad 1 games, the ACC is 16-31 so far this season. That's, again, all non-conference. Against quad 2, they're 18-10. So, again, a little bit better. They have 9 teams in the top 50 of the net. They have 14 teams in the top 100 of the net. And I think what has been good is that a lot of teams have been testing themselves against the better teams in the Power 4 conferences. And so that gives a little bit more of a layer. And just think about some of the common opponents that we already have, right? Kansas has basically played half of the ACC. Michigan has played half and Michigan State have played half the ACC already. So we have some of these common barriers and a common opponents that the selection committee can say, hey, these ACC teams stack up. And that's the point here is you'd love to have a winning record against the top 50, but to have a number of wins to again kind of say, hey, when it comes down to it in the end, when they're in that selection room and they're saying we're comparing, Clemson to, let's say, Iowa. Okay, Iowa is the Big Ten. They have like 10 quad 1 wins. Okay, well, Clemson has 8. But who did they play? They beat this team. We beat that team. That's when you start getting those arguments and winning those arguments. So, and that also, again, the more teams from the ACC that get into the tournament, as we've mentioned, helps Duke if they're at the top of that conference when we're talking about number 1 seeds and number 2 seeds. So that's what we're looking at here. When you think about overall, we've done pretty well, but of course we would like to see it be a little bit better, especially against the top half, the top 50 of KenPom in the net.
All right, speaking of the top 50, I want to get into a few ACC teams who have outperformed expectations, who frankly been better than I thought they would be, and better than what the experts, the advanced metrics and the such said they would be at the beginning of the year. I'm going to start with Virginia. Virginia started the year 59th in KenPom. They're currently 24th. To go from being barely top 60 to top 25, that is really impressive. They have nice wins against Northwestern, Texas, Maryland, Dayton. Many of those wins by double digits. This Virginia club, look, Tony Bennett left. A lot of people thought Virginia was just, going to sink. And for them to play the way they have has really been impressive. All right, next thing to talk about is Miami. They started the year 76th in KenPom. They are now 35th. That's a big move, moving up 40 spots. Really impressive for Miami. We love Jay Lucas, and he is doing a hell of a job coaching the Miami Hurricanes. Now, look, Miami's still in search of a signature win. Their best victory so far comes over Ole Miss, who is 59th in KenPom. But for Miami to have moved up as much as they have, to put themselves in a position where, look, if the tournament was today, Miami'd probably be in. That's a really, really nice spot for Miami to be in. Another team that's been impressive this year is Cal. Cal is 12-1 on the season. They started the year barely in the top 90 or so. They're now 60th in KenPom. That's not huge, but that is a nice move up. Cal is one of these teams that if they have a good ACC regular season, they can make a really strong case for being in the NCAA tournament. Cal, by the way, has a really nice win over UCLA. That is an impressive win. And then the last thing I want to mention that's frankly doing better than people expected, Duke fans are not going to enjoy this, UNC. Let's just be honest. Carolina was barely top 35 in the preseason, efficiency rankings by Ken Pomeroy. They're currently number 22. They just got Seth Trimble back. When they lost Seth Trimble, I think everyone thought that this was a team that was going to struggle. They played really, really well through that stretch without him. They've got him back now. Carolina has some really impressive wins. Got a victory over Kansas, victory over Kentucky, victory over Ohio State. Haven't been exactly blowing teams out that much, but this Carolina team looks like they are definitely one of the teams that's going to compete for the very top of the ACC, as much as we hate to see it.
And I think with all those teams, and really, again, Jason, when you look at most of the ACC and you look at their biggest wins, they're against Power 4 conferences, Power 5 conferences, and really a lot of them are coming against the vaunted Big Ten and SEC. And that's what you want to see, right? You mentioned Kansas and Kentucky, who have played half of the ACC. BYU has played half the ACC. And now, like when you look at like Miami, for example, you mentioned that they're lacking of a signature win. They still have a decent win over Ole Miss, and I believe that came in the ACC SEC Challenge.
Yes,
they just barely lost to Florida. They just barely lost to BYU, in the span of like a week and a half. And I again, for a young team with a first-year coach and a lot of almost everybody turned over from that team, that's fine. They're going to get their signature wins, and thankfully during the regular season it won't be against us because we don't play them. So they can beat everybody they want to. But again, the fact that a lot of these teams that you see on this list, all these teams have wins over a Kansas, a Kentucky, an Indiana, a Michigan State, Texas A&M, UCLA, TCU. All of them are from conferences that are considered better than us in all the metrics. So again, when you get into that room, you go, hey, TCU is going up against Cal. Cal can say, look, TCU, they're in the Big 12. That's great. But we're in the ACC. We, finished 12-8 or whatever it is. We got to the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. We beat UCLA in non-conference. They have the resume building wins that a lot of these teams need to get into the tournament. And I think that's way marketed better than it was last year when we were kind of like, they beat Rutgers, ? Like we were trying to search for signature wins from the ACC outside of the top 3 teams. Now everyone has at least one on their resume that you can take to the selection committee and say, this is a good win.
All right, we talked about the teams. I want to get to the players very quickly. And all these guys are going to be new names. These are going to be players that if you follow ACC basketball, you've probably heard of some of them, but these are all freshmen. These are all transfers. These are guys who I want folks to just be acquainted with these players. And it's worth noting, I think every single guy I'm about to talk about has a very, very good chance to be either first or second team all ACC this year. So these are guys you need to pay attention to. It begins with a name that everyone's already heard. Caleb Wilson of UNC. He is a freshman. He is considered like second only to Cameron Boozer, arguably the second best power forward in all of college basketball. He's averaging 19.6 points per game for the Tar Heels, 10.8 rebounds per game. Caleb Wilson leads the ACC in rebounding as a freshman. And by the way, the Ken Pom Player of the Year rankings, Cameron Boozer's running away with it. Cameron Boozer's far and away number 1. Caleb Wilson's number 4 on that list. Like AJ Dybance is number 3, Caleb Wilson's number 4. Caleb Wilson is a really, really impressive player as just a freshman. Another freshman I want you to be on the lookout for, Mikel Brown Jr. at Louisville, averaging 16.6 points per game, 5+ assists per game. The thing I want you to pay attention to with Mikel Brown, he is not shooting well so far. He's only hitting 26% of his threes. And I've seen enough of this guy. I saw what he did in high school. We've seen what he did for Team USA. Mikel Brown Jr. is absolutely capable of hitting three-pointers at a higher than 26% rate. If this guy suddenly starts hitting, 35% of his threes because he's that good a shooter, watch out. He could explode and really give Cam Boozer a run for his money for best player in the ACC. I will not be surprised at all if that happens. All right, I'm going to get to some names that maybe folks aren't as familiar with now because those are 2 of the most high-profile freshmen in the country. Have you heard of Tista Ritter? This is a dude playing for Virginia. We talked, Donald, a moment ago about how well Virginia's done. A lot of Virginia's success this year is because wing Tista Ritter has been outstanding. 16 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. Dude's hitting almost 44% of his threes. Really impressive freshman player, international player. A lot of these guys are international guys who come to the U.S. and are playing great from day one. Another freshman, another wing, who is actually, I guess this guy isn't a wing. He's more of a point guard now that I think about it. Playing for Virginia Tech, Nicholas Avdalas. I think he's from Greece. A man is 6'9" and plays point guard, hitting 37% of his threes. He is one of the reasons Virginia Tech is a team that looks like they could compete in the ACC. And Nicholas Avdalas is one of the major reasons why. By the way, we're mentioning Virginia Tech. I want to point out for folks, Jaden Schutt, former Dookie Jaden Schutt, is playing really well for Virginia Tech this year. He's coming off the bench for them, but he's averaging 10 points per game. He's hitting 45% of his three-pointers. Jaden Schutt might be the best three-point shooter in the ACC. Really, really happy for him that things have worked out nicely for him at Virginia Tech. And the last player I want to mention, we've talked about Miami, Donald. Miami is being led by Malik Reneau, transfer from Indiana. Last year, he was 13 points per game at IU. Pretty good. 13 points per game at a big-time program. Nothing, that's nothing to sneeze at. This year at Miami, dude's averaging better than 20 points per game. I mean, he is filling it up for the Hurricanes, and he is a beast on the offensive boards, gets a lot of offensive rebounds for Miami. Those are just some of the names of some of the guys that I think are impacting the ACC race already. And man, Donald, there are just a lot of really good wings and forwards in the ACC. I like almost every guy I mentioned in this list is a wing or a forward, someone who potentially could be matched up against Cameron Boozer. No days off for Cam in the ACC this year. There are going to be dudes who want to take the crown from him every single game that we play.
Yeah, if you think about it, right, you mentioned some players that are on teams that we know about, right? We knew Louisville was going to be good. We knew UNC was probably going to bounce back in some way, shape, or form. A guy from Miami who, again, Miami was the very bottom of the conference last year and turned over their entire roster. To have somebody emerge from that team to lead them to be 11-2 is excellent. We haven't even mentioned NC State, who was supposed to be one of those teams at the top of the ACC. And in the metrics, they still are, but they're 9-4. And they don't have very many quality wins yet because every game, they loaded up their schedule and they just lost all those games. So there's going to be a point where they figure it out. There's going to be a point when Clemson figures it out.
By the way, with NC State, I didn't even mention Darian Williams, who a lot of people thought like first or second team All-American kind of guy who's a transfer there. He's shooting really well, but some of the other things that people thought were going to happen with him haven't really worked out so far yet. But this is a guy who's done it before at big time college level. So yeah, NC State's the team. We haven't even mentioned them yet. They could absolutely. You tell me that NC State's first or second in the ACC at the end of the year, I'm not shocked at it.
Yeah, again, some of these teams that we thought were going to do well, and even some teams that we thought maybe would struggle, but again, have just one little thing that's connecting them from being good to great to elite, right? Syracuse with Keon Anthony, Keon Anthony, if he breaks out in the middle of the season, they're going to be a problem. Stanford is 11-2. We have teams like that who were not great last year, but are now emerging as a good team. And then again, you mentioned some of the dangerous guys that are even on this Georgia Tech team that have struggled so far this year and are still 9-4 and considered the second worst team in the conference. So you have this conference has gotten a lot stronger. The coaches have done a great job at recruiting, retooling their lineup so that they have guys have come through, right? They've had some development. You mentioned Jaden Schutt, which I'm very, very happy for him that he's been able to develop into a player that has his role, exercises his role well. And that's the role that he was going to play at Duke, right? Coming off the bench, scoring some threes and contributing on that end without a lot of pressure. Now he has even less pressure to do that, and he's responding with some of the best numbers of his career. So I'm really, really happy for him in that. But you have all these players who in this ACC are going to make it difficult. This is not going to be a cakewalk, as you mentioned. No one's going 19-1 because it's not a 20-game schedule anymore. But no, this is not going to be. This is a season where you could easily see the winner of this conference have 3, 4, maybe 5 losses because the overall conference has gotten stronger, and so it's dependent upon Duke to understand that as the top dog, they're going to get everyone's best shot. And as the second dog, they're still going to get everyone's best shot because DUK is across our chest. So we have to approach this ACC season lot differently than we did last year. I remember when we had Sion James on, and Sion was like, yeah, we kind of knew halfway through the season that we were busting everybody's butt, right? Like they had that in their mind. And they just kind of said, okay, let's just go out and do it. This team has to develop the mentality of, hey, we're not going to bust everybody's butt every night. We're not going to come in here and blow everybody out by 40. We can strive to do that, but we're going to have to earn it. We're going to have to work for it. And that intensity level has got to be high. That's, I'm sure, what was exercised upon them by the coaching staff over the break. Whether they're at home, whether on campus, everyone looks and sees the Cam Boozers and the Pat Gongbas and the Slim Evans and says, this is the team that we need to beat to get to the NCAA tournament. So we have to figure out how to stay on top by playing our best against the best of the ACC.
And by the way, it gets started right away. I mean, like we're going to start to see the sorting happen like immediately. I mean, Cal is 12-1. They play Louisville tomorrow night. You've got Virginia Tech 11-2, and a team that, like we talked about, a team that maybe is performing a little better than some expected. They get Virginia right out of the gate. Syracuse is 9-4. They get Clemson as their very first game. And Syracuse, it's worth noting, Donnie Freeman has missed almost the entire season for them. Everyone says he is their best player. They think he's going to be back for that game. And he can just transform that team instantly. There's just a lot of really, really interesting matchups, as we begin ACC season, and we're going to begin to start to learn, some of what these teams did in the preseason. Was it smoke and mirrors, or is it the real thing? And how does it translate once you're playing against, the local opponent, the conference opponent, day in, day out as we move throughout the season? It's more exciting than it was last year when these teams just looked like they all sucked.
And look, Jason, I know we have 2 games that we're going to have first, but we play Louisville. We go to Louisville in just over a week, right? Like, so again, this is not like last year. We kind of had it was like maybe 2 weeks or so before we got like our first mini test. We're getting what many people think is the second best team in the ACC. Right off the bat, we're going to get a team that is kind of underperforming, but again, is primed for a breakout right now. So like every game we got to lock in. This team's got to lock in. All of us as fans have to lock in and just focus on the game at hand. Focus on who's in front of us. And right now, that's Georgia Tech. Let's start out 1-0 in the ACC, and then let's take it from there. But this is going to be this is why we get paid the big bucks, and by we I mean Duke, not you and I. This is the ACC season. This is the best. We think this is the best conference in college basketball, and every other team in the ACC is about to show us why.
There you go, baby. All right. With that, we're going to wrap it up here on the latest edition of the Duke Basketball Roundup, DBR Bites. He is Donald. I am Jason. Hey, we hope all of you have a very, very happy new year. We may be back to talk about Darren Rippey tomorrow at this time. We'll see.
We hope so. We hope we talk to you tomorrow.
Exactly. If not, we'll talk to you in the new year after the Blue Devils have played Georgia Tech. Until then, here's the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.